God, we thank you for this day. Again, we thank you for the opportunity that we have to gather together in person or online, the chance that we have just to be with our fellow believers, to be able to sing our praises to you, to be able to hear from your word, God, and to be able to meet today around your table. We ask that whatever you're doing in us and through us, God, we would be open to it. We would be receptive to your love and your care, God, that we would be receptive to your discipline and your instruction. God, help us to grow up into what you would have us to be. Father, and most of all, we thank you for your Son who taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I'm going to move stuff around just a little bit today. If I don't have a note in front of me, I forget to say things. And so this one says communion and fellowship offering. So I'm going to take a moment, and I'm going to go get my communion Lunchable so that I can be ready here in a moment. And that means if you're at home, now would be a good time to do that as well. It's always something, isn't it? If I don't forget my Bible, I forget communion. Don't tell me you've never left your briefcase at home. All right. I couldn't do it on purpose. If I tried, I couldn't mess that many things up in one morning. All right. We are going to be today in Luke chapter 7. Luke chapter 7, starting with verse 1, if you want to follow along with us. I'm going to be reading from the New Revised Standard Version. All right. When I was growing up, one of my very favorite things in the world was Christmas. I used to love to go to my grandparents' house, my grandparents' houses. One set of grandparents lived in Kansas City, Missouri. The other set lived in Mooresville, Missouri, still do. And we used to, when I was in first and second grade, kindergarten, first and second grade, we also lived in Mooresville, Missouri. And so we used to go to my grandparents' house in Mooresville, and then my grandparents' house in Kansas City. And that was our tradition. That's what Christmas meant for us. I honestly have no idea what my nuclear family did on Christmas Day, because all I remember is going to my grandparents' houses in Mooresville and in Kansas City. That was the big deal. And it was comforting. It was familiar. It's what we always did, and so it became this common part of my Christmas experience, so much so that I look forward to it every year. And then, before my third grade year, we moved out to western Nebraska. It was a very long drive from there to Mooresville. If you want to know where we lived initially when we moved out there, if you know where Gordon is, that's a town of about 1,000 people. If you know where Hyannis is, that's a town of about 600 to 800 people. We were not close to either of those. If you draw a line as the crow flies between them, not next to the highways, not right off the main roads, draw a line as the crow flies between Gordon and Hyannis, we moved to the middle of that line on the Fawn Lake Ranch. And it was a very long drive back to Mooresville, and I wasn't sure that we were going to be able to make it. And I thought, what are we going to do around Christmas? This is what we always do. We always go to Mooresville for Christmas. What are we going to do this year? So we drove. Now, I did not like driving. I did not like being in the car for 8 hours or anything like that. It completely disrupted my whole Christmas experience. And so, Mom, when you watch this later, I'm still mad. I'm not really still mad. We moved out to the Fawn Lake Ranch and drove for hours and hours and hours to get back to Missouri for Christmas. And I thought I was going to hate it because I didn't enjoy being in the car at all. I didn't like short drives, much less super long drives. And so, to lessen the tedium, my parents started putting on some of their favorite Christmas albums. So we listened to the Beach Boys Christmas album. We listened to the Carpenters Christmas album. Still the best version of Have Yourselves a Merry Little Christmas is Karen Carpenter from the Carpenters. And we listened to John Denver and the Muppets. I am not making this up. That was our favorite Christmas album, was John Denver and the Muppets. And so this thing that was incredibly disruptive to me, that I was upset about having to do, for driving for hours and hours and hours to get to Missouri, all of a sudden we started listening to this music that I'd heard before. I knew it, but I wasn't used to listening to it for such long periods of time. And so on the way back from Mooresville, we listened to the same albums again, and I got to hear the same songs over again. And now, to this day, 30 years later, I still make my kids listen to those same Christmas albums. Yep. Can I get an amen from the balcony? That has become a new part of my tradition. This thing that initially was incredibly disruptive, I was not expecting this to happen. I wasn't particularly excited about it happening. Open space for this new thing to emerge that became part of my new tradition. It woke me up to new things that I hadn't thought of, hadn't seen, hadn't heard of, and I ended up kind of loving. We are comforted by the familiar. We want to see the same things. We want to do the same things. We want to sit in the same pews. We want to hear the same things. We want to hear the same songs. I already told you I was incredibly, incredibly comforted this morning when I found out the first song that Sam had picked out. Blessed Assurance is something that I've been singing since I was younger than any of my kids are now, and that is, there is a deep, comforting feeling. But we are awakened by the unexpected. We are comforted by the familiar, but we are awakened by the unexpected. We're going to be looking at a couple of the miracles that Jesus performed, and we're going to be looking at how those things challenged the people in Jesus' day. How the types of miracles that he was performing, the ways that he was performing the miracles, they were all unexpected and opened up space for people to be awakened from the familiar. So let's go ahead and start in Luke chapter 7, starting with verse 1. After Jesus had finished all his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. A centurion there had a slave whom he valued highly and who was ill and close to death. When he heard about Jesus, he sent some Jewish elders to him, asking him to come and heal his slave. When they came to Jesus, they appealed to him earnestly, saying, "He is worthy of having you do this for him, for he loves our people, and it is he who built our synagogue for us." And Jesus went with them. But when he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to say to him, "Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy to have you come under my roof. Therefore I did not presume to come to you, but only speak the word, and let my servant be healed. For I also am a man set under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another, 'Come,' and he comes, and to my slave, do this, and the slave does it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him. And turning to the crowd that followed him, he said, "I tell you, not even in Israel have I seen such faith." When those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the slave in good health. Soon afterwards, he went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went with him. As he approached the gate of the town, a man who had died was being carried out. He was his mother's only son, and she was a widow, and with her was a large crowd from the town. When the Lord saw her, he had compassion for her and said to her, "Do not weep." Then he came forward and touched the bier, and the bearer stood still. And he said, "Young man, I say to you, rise." The dead man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him to his mother. Fear seized all of them, and they glorified God, saying, "A great prophet has risen among us, and God has looked favorably on his people." This word about him spread throughout Judea and all the surrounding country. May God bless the reading and hearing of just a portion of God's word. Jesus' miracles were often unexpected to the people around him. They were used to miracle workers. They were used to people going from town to town and doing small healings, finding people who were sick and helping them. But Jesus' miracles, Jesus' healings were unexpected in several ways for the people in his day. And the first is that Jesus healed unexpected people. Jesus helped unexpected people. Jesus went, first of all, to the centurion. Now, this was an unexpected person for Jesus to help. An officer in the Roman army who was occupying the Israelite territory at the time. This was, make no mistake, an enemy occupation. Roman soldiers who had come into God's land over God's people and had set up a foreign government in charge of them. And what's more, the centurion knew it. And so he didn't even go to Jesus himself, but rather had people from his community go out to Jesus, elders of the Jewish community, had them go out to Jesus and say, "Listen, this guy is not actually so bad. Yes, he is part of the ruling authority. Yes, they are oppressing us, and yet he is doing some good things." The centurion, the Roman officer, the officer in the Roman army, was an unexpected person for Jesus to help. Jesus helped unexpected people. And Jesus also helped in unexpected ways. Jesus helped in unexpected ways. Jesus didn't go to the centurion's house. The centurion said, "Listen, I understand how authority works. I understand what it is for someone else to have power and for me to be under that power. And I see you as my authority. And I see you as an authority not just over me, but over sickness and health and life and death itself. And if you are an authority over sickness and death, all you have to do is say the word." And so Jesus did. He helped in an unexpected way. But even more than that, Jesus went out to the widow at Nain. And why was it important that she was a widow? Why does it matter that the woman at Nain was a widow? Her husband had passed away, and this was her only son. And again, in the first century, that meant that she had no way to support herself. It was not easy for a woman in the first century to just go out and get a job to pay the bills. And so she had no good way of taking care of herself. And so if she had one son, one breadwinner, one person who could take care of her and make sure that she had what she needed, and he also had passed away, this meant that she was not just poor, she was about to be destitute. She was about to be set into a very difficult situation. And so when Jesus had compassion, it wasn't just on the young man who had died, it was on the widow, on the person who was about to be in a situation where she was not able to care for herself. And so Jesus went up to the people who were carrying the young man. They would often pull out something like a stretcher. They called it a bier. It was a way for them to carry the deceased person's body. Now, there were numerous repercussions of the fact that they were carrying around a dead body. If you go back to the Hebrew Bible, go back to Old Testament law, it would create a state of uncleanness for anyone who was to touch the body. And even for those who were carrying the bier around, those who were carrying the dead body would for a time be in a state of uncleanness. So in the Old Testament, these two things went together, uncleanness and unholiness. That there was this idea that you could not be around the holy things of God if you had been in contact with someone or something who was unclean. And so they would have to separate themselves from the community for a time. And so these young men are carrying around this body. And what did Jesus do? Jesus, who had just, we found out, not had to be in the same room, not had to be in the same house, not had to be in proximity at all to uncleanness, to sickness, in order to heal it. What did Jesus do? Did Jesus say from a distance, I don't want to be unclean. I don't want anyone else to be unclean. And so I'm going to shout from the other room. I'm going to tell you from here. I'm going to take my authority and I'm going to heal this uncleanness. I am going to raise this dead life. No, what he did is he walked up and he touched it. He walked up to the woman, walked up to the young men who were carrying the body, and he touched the bier, touched what was carrying the body. And that would have been shocking for people in that day. Touching a dead body or something that was touching a dead body would never be done intentionally, except in this specific ritual instance where they were in a funeral procession. Why? Because it made you unclean. It was a contagion. It was a disease, and the uncleanness would get on you. But Jesus walked up and deliberately touched it. Why? Because uncleanness did not get on Jesus. Jesus got on uncleanness. Jesus didn't help in ways that people expected because he wasn't just helping sick people to get better. He wasn't even just helping dead people to become alive. He was taking on himself the sickness and the death and the uncleanness, and he was taking his holiness and imparting that to the people around him. He was absorbing the death. Now, this is eventually what he would do in the cross and in the grave. He would absorb all the sin. He would absorb all the death. He would take it on himself. And then he died and buried it. He buried the sin. He buried the uncleanness. He buried the death. And then he rose to new life. And that was still buried. But even in his life, even before the cross, even before the resurrection, even before the ascension, he was taking on himself the uncleanness. He was taking on himself the sickness. He was taking on himself the death. And with his touch was imparting life, was imparting cleanness, was imparting holiness. Jesus helped in unexpected ways, and Jesus' help had unexpected effects. Jesus' healing, Jesus' help for these people brought faith to the house of a Roman. Jesus' healing and Jesus' help brought life to the dead. Jesus' help and Jesus' healing brought wholeness and holiness and cleanness, even to the broken and to the unclean and to the unholy. Jesus helped unexpected people. Jesus helped in unexpected ways, and Jesus' help had unexpected effects. Jesus' work is often unexpected for us. And sometimes that's bad because sometimes we miss it. We miss what Jesus is actually doing because of what we are looking for. We miss what Jesus is actually doing because what we are so familiar with. We are comforted by the familiar, but we are awakened by the unexpected. Now, I say this as the absolute, undisputed champion of being comforted by the familiar. I too am comforted by the familiar. I want to know what to expect. I want to know what's coming. I don't like things changing around me. I like to know what God is doing. I want to be able to expect it. I want to be able to see it coming miles down the road and see it coming towards me and welcome Jesus. But that is not always how it happens, is it? Jesus' work is sometimes unexpected. It sometimes looks in unexpected ways. It sometimes shows up in unexpected people. It sometimes has unexpected effects. So my challenge to you, my invitation to you today is to look for how we are expecting Jesus to show up. What do we expect it to look like when Jesus acts? What do we expect it to look like when God is doing things in the world? Where are we expecting to see Jesus? And the flip side of that coin is, where are we not expecting to see Jesus? What people are we not expecting Jesus to show up in? Where are we not expecting God to work? And how can we be looking for God there? How can we be looking for Jesus even in unexpected places, even in unexpected ways? How can we be looking for Jesus to show up in ways that will awaken us to the unexpected? We often think we know what it looks like when Jesus shows up. We are confident because we have the scriptures. We know what the Spirit of God is like. We know the fruit of the Spirit. We know the Sermon on the Mount. We know the words and the actions and the teachings of Jesus. But we just went through the Christmas season, right? We just went through the narrative of the Nativity. We just went through this story about a group of people who knew their Bibles frontwards and backwards, and they missed the birth of Jesus. We just went through the story of a group of people who spent all their time out in the hills among unclean animals, maybe spending time in prayer, but certainly not spending their time in Bible study, and they were the ones to whom Jesus came. Those were the ones that got the angelic chorus that told them about the birth of Jesus. We just got through hearing about the story of a few magi, wise men, magicians, astrologers, astronomers from a foreign country. They were the ones who knew where Jesus was going to be born. Jesus shows up in often unexpected ways. So when we least expect it, when things around us are difficult and crazy, when we think that we may not be as successful as we want to in following Jesus, when we ourselves are broken and hurting, when we aren't necessarily expecting Jesus to show up, expect him. Be looking for Jesus even in times or places that you're not expecting. Would you join me in prayer this morning? Creator, Redeemer, Sustainer. God, we thank you for the ways that you do show up in us and around us and through us. And we just ask that you would awaken us to where you are showing up in unexpected places. God, that you would comfort us by the familiar, but you would awaken us by the unexpected. God, we thank you for your love and care for us. And God, we love and we trust you. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. So we don't have a table to meet around today. There is a power, though, to the idea that we are all meeting around one table. That one of the places Jesus often shows up is in our communion with Him and with one another. That it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, you are welcome around God's table today. And so we invite all who are gathered here in the building, online, over the phone. We invite you all to partake this morning. So on the night Jesus was betrayed, He took bread, blessed it, broke it, and gave it to His disciples, saying, "This is my body, broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And in the same way, after eating, Jesus took the cup, blessed it, poured it out, and gave it to His disciples, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this in remembrance of me." Now, it is the tradition of this congregation to, on the first Sunday of every month, participate in communion, meet around the table together, and then give a special offering for those among our community who are hurting, those who have a special need. And so if you have an offering for the fellowship offering today, we invite you to, after service, bring it forward and put it in the plate. If you are at home, to designate that special offering for a fellowship offering. So now may the love of God and the peace of Christ and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you now and always. And may you too go to find Christ in the unexpected. Go in peace.